Hello. Would you like to destroy some evil today?
No, Sword Nemi, we're going to talk about Dark and Darker Wipe 5. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Also, Happy New Year. I've been taking some time off of Dark and Darker since the patch 69 Clown Fiesta, but I'm back for Wipe 5. I've been playing it off and on since it dropped, and this video will discuss Wipe 5 for Dark and Darker, my takes on its new systems, and we'll be following up from some conversational points from 2024. To summarize in advance, I think Wipe 5 has a bunch of great ideas in it, which are being held back slightly due to poor tuning and poor execution. But let's discuss Wipe 5, starting with the good. Map choice. It's been almost a year, but we finally have agency again over what maps we can play and when we can play them. No more waiting 6+ minutes for our preferred map to come around in a rotation whose only purpose was to create the illusion of quick queue times. Taking away map choice was a fatuous, self-inflicted wound, which cost the game many players. I'm very glad that the forced map rotation is gone, hopefully for good. This change is part of what Iron Mace is calling the continuous dungeon experience, and we'll cover that in a little bit more detail later. The quest system has been refactored for Wipe 5. I'm very happy to report that the quests, at least through Chapter 3, have been greatly reduced in their amount of grind. Your opinions will likely vary based on your playtime, but as it stands right now, they feel pretty achievable even with limited playtime. This is the best start to a season's quest we've seen so far, largely due to how they've been refactored to accommodate low amounts of playtime. As a quick aside, ladders now work in Dark and Darker. They have been a buggy mess for the better part of the last year, but when your character climbs up or down a ladder, you can do so without fear of getting stuck at the top or the bottom. It's a fantastic change. Thank you, Iron Mace. They have added a new gem socketing system. This is a great addition. I didn't really know what to think about this when it was first announced, but the implementation has been very well done. This is likely the largest deflationary force on the game's economy we've ever seen, and also the greatest step to the democratization of gear for the player base as a whole. It's a pretty straightforward system. If you pick up a nice piece of gear with a dead stat, you can convert a gem of that same rarity as the item to put a live stat in its place, a stat of your choice. This has had a profound impact on the availability of good gear, and it's a welcome change. Essentially, if an item was near BIS, it can now be BIS. Fantastic work. Dynamic tile sets and the addition of Fog of War. It's early days, but so far I'm really liking this system. It's only deployed on the second level, aka Crypts. But it's an innovation I've been asking for a while, and it adds a ton of replayability to the game. Simply put, this system randomizes the layouts of rooms and modules, and connects the modules you know in new ways. Like I said, it's early days and we're just seeing the early testing, but I see a bright future for this methodology when they work out some of the kinks. This requires a great deal of technical work and refactoring of modules to really pay off, but these map dynamics, coupled with future randomizations, will really make every run of every dungeon feel distinct. And that's a summary of my favorite changes for Wipe 5. Let's talk about some of the bad stuff. The continuous dungeon experience. In their last appearance, Terry, Odin, and SDF talked about the game's new design pillars. Terry mentioned that the team is focused on adventure and exploration in this release, and that these elements will be important to the game's direction moving forward. Firstly, it's great to hear the guys talking about anything relating to future plans in any referenceable terms. I strongly agree that exploration is a great aspect to this game, and this system is a great step in that direction, but its current execution is lacking. The concept is essentially you can go down or you can go out of the dungeon pretty much whenever you want after the first minute or so in a game's given level. And then the queue system or matchmaking system will provide back pressure to that lobby in the form of fresh players loading in, to ensure that there are lots of players to interact with at any given time. It's a great concept on paper, clearly built to solve the problem of empty lobbies. The problem I see is with the system's tuning. Longtime players may remember a year ago when they tried making the Goblin Caves a 3x3 tile set. It turned the map essentially into a deathmatch game mode. Constant third parties, constant fourth parties. Well, the game certainly feels just like that right now. As a matter of fact, the Ruins feels like an old Call of Duty map called the Kill House. Whether or not you enjoy this format is largely a matter of taste. Some people will clearly prefer the high-octane constant PvP that having, 25 players load into a map over a 5-minute period will bring. Others will absolutely hate it, and I think it comes down to, once again, personal preference. My point of view is that it cheapens the game of Dark and Darker, particularly when it's the same folks loading in and out of the same map on repeat. I think it puts so much emphasis on the PvP element that it boxes out any potential for the game to be viewed in any other light, or through the lens of any of the design pillars that Terry and team discussed. It's given rise to what I've heard described as the vulture meta, and it represents the worst new player experience the game has ever had. A very weird choice, if you ask me, when engaging Epic Games Store to give away premium access to your game to lots and lots of new players. Regardless, something I said at the start of 2024, once you have solved for quick queue times, you then need to turn your attention to creating high-quality lobbies. And in this case, that means sorting players into groups which respect their preferences about either how much PvP they want in their exploration experience or how much exploration they want in their deathmatch. The largest barrier to Dark and Darker's potential for commercial success is in its forcing of more PvP onto players who want less of it, and by thinking that there's only one way that people can enjoy this game. Before all the angry comments get started, I'm not advocating that Dark and Darker exist without PvP. I think the threat that PvP could erupt at any time is core to the Dark and Darker experience. But hear me out here. There is room for nuance in its implementation. I know that's a dirty word to some of you, but there is more than one way to play with this toy, and giving people an experience with the game that's more tailored to their preference is easy and feasible. In summary, I like the continuous dungeoning concept. I think it needs more time in the oven and certainly needs some tuning. Lastly, Wipe 5 brings a new character class to Dark and Darker, the Sorcerer. For reasons passing understanding, the team at Iron Mace released this new class in a deliberately broken state. I don't have a lot of seat time on the class myself, but it feels distinctly like this is the first, quote, hero class, end quote, for Dark and Darker. It is miles better in its design and its capabilities than any class we've seen up to date. It has high damage. It has crowd control. It has pets. It has area denial. It has the ability to break doors, and of course, it can use the longsword, because why not? It has a very high skill ceiling, so I don't think we've really seen any true mastery of this class yet, and I don't think we've seen peak sorcerer yet, but I predict that this class will likely be as hard or harder to balance than the druid or the barb has been historically. And so as I start to wrap up here, I want to mention my last conversation I had with you guys in 2024. And as you may remember, in my last video, I called for SDF to be replaced as the lead designer of Dark and Dark. A comment and a point of view I stand by today. Many commenters on my last video thought I was calling for SDF to be fired. I was not. That's not so easily done with entrenched management, particularly if they hold significant equity positions, as he likely does. Instead, I've called for him to be replaced by Terry as the game's director and product leader. Why? Because if you thought that patch 69 was a good idea, if you thought that releasing a new class like Sorcerer in a deliberately broken state was a good idea, well, your judgment is simply and overtly flawed. And if your judgment is flawed, you can't be the guy who makes these calls. SDF is one bad day away from letting barbarians throw hunter traps like they throw axes, and longtime players know it. If you agree, please look at the link in the description of this video to an online petition, once again asking Terry to take over head designer responsibilities and product leadership for Dark and Dark. Thanks for watching, and until next time, Koopa out. The bow. Interesting choice.
Not what I would have done.
You pulled out a molly.